Hi everyone. Hi everyone. My name is Louise Brown. I'm from Grimshaw. I'm going to talk to you today about Shenzhen East Integrated Transport Hub. So the brief of this project was the most integrated hub in the world. That challenge set to us by Shenzhen Metro, our client, our collaborators. We had local LDIs, AVIC and BJUCD, international collaborators, Mott MacDonald, Atelier 10, Schleich Bergam and Grossmax as well. So it's this combination of international and local team for extremely challenging and complex project. So the site is located beside Shenzhen Airport to the east of the airport. Currently, this is a future master plan for the airport. There's Terminal 3 and the satellite terminal that are existing, Terminal 2, which is future terminal, and then our project, which is Shenzhen East Integrated Transport Hub, which also incorporates Terminal 1. And the pretty amazing thing about this particular site is that all the other airport terminals are isolated within the airfields. This one is actually really connected back into the city. So it's integrated into an existing urban, mainly residential area. So you can almost walk from this residential area straight into this transport hub. So Shenzhen has undergone phenomenal growth in the last 30 years, from 0.3 of a population in 1980 to 12.6 million today. And that sits within the context of a cluster of cities of another 70 million people. And a relatively young city at that, with the average age of 35. So it's a pretty incredible place if you've ever been there. So the brief was to combine various forms of land and air transport together. There's a 20 million passenger per year terminal, 12 high-speed rail lines, 4 metro stations, 2 intercity lines, and then on top of that, integration of people, systems, micromobility and ecology all weaving throughout the project. So the site is set in this coastal city of Shenzhen, and Shenzhen is flanked by aligned by these beautiful mangrove reserves. Mangrove is a national tree of Shenzhen, but it's also very important in terms of protecting Shenzhen's coast, but also a phenomenal carbon absorber as well. So we really took inspiration from the mangrove tree. So the project, of course, is inspired by nature, but also how nature and technology can knit together. Shenzhen is kind of the Silicon Valley of China, so with a focus on science and technology as its core industry. So there are 6 key themes for the project. This was to be a unique hub, giving a really strong identity to the city as a gateway to the city. A highly efficient hub, so not only highly efficient in its integration of transport modes, but also efficient in the way it uses materials. A regenerative hub, so looking at how it's in harmony with nature. A vibrant hub, so a place that's really abundant with life. It's not just a destination to where you go to get onto a transport mode. It's also a place where people come to every day. The world's most connected hub, so that's the brief in itself, but it's connecting air and rail and all sorts of different transport types. And an innovative hub, so around the airport there's actually a science and technology zone as well. So as I mentioned, our inspiration was from mangrove trees, not only the kind of the shape or the form of the mangrove trees, but the whole ecosystem, the way a mangrove canopy provides a protection for a whole ecosystem underneath and a really thriving abundance of life underneath that canopy. So the same was for our proposal for the building. We've got this beautiful canopy that's symbolic of a mangrove tree, but underneath it's really hosting a whole ecosystem of people. So the canopy itself, the form is quite curvilinear. It's quite beautiful in its form. But what we try to do is try to make it quite efficient. So we use a modular approach. So by using that modularity, we get economy and scale. Also, by using that modular approach, we managed to have quite a flexible condition underneath. We had very long spans, up to 68 meters of some of these petals. The double curvature allowed us to be highly efficient in terms of the amount of material we used on the roof, but also by having these large spans between the modules, we freed up the ground conditions. The planning underneath could be very flexible, and not only for what we've planned today, but also change and evolve over time. We've used a kit apart approach again, trying to reduce the amount of column types, etc., and trying to make it as efficient as possible. So this is an image of that canopy and what it does. And we worked very hard with Atelier 10. The main strategy behind our sustainability strategy was to try and reduce the amount of enclosure. Usually these types of facilities are hermetically sealed white boxes. So what we were trying to do is try and limit the amount of enclosures as possible. So we only really enclose parts of the terminal, the high-speed rail waiting hall, and everything else is external or semi-external, and in this kind of third space where the roof provides shade, shelter. It also moderates light as well and creates this really comfortable environment through which the landscape permeates. And you can see here, this is a plan of the building really showing the limited amount of closure and how much permeability there is through the site. So it's an integration of many different forms of transport. In the centre, in the orange, we've got the high-speed rail platforms and waiting hall. To the right over here, we've got 2 existing metro lines. So we're also working in a condition where we've got existing metro lines on site, some elevated, some underground. 2 new metro lines, 2 intercity lines, and then the terminal, 20 million passengers per year, plus the APM. So everything's coming together. We're working with different local design institutes, different stakeholders in government, National Rail, Metro, Airport Group. So not only is this project very technologically difficult to resolve, it's also, technically difficult to resolve, it's also that management of the stakeholders and all the different needs and desires and political decisions that are way beyond our control, all impacting the kind of time frame in the design process. This is an image of the high-speed rail waiting hall. You can see here we've got different treatments of the ceiling, just to give each space different character. And as I mentioned before, it's not just the hub building itself, it's actually a master plan for 119 hectares. To the far right, we've got the cargo handling facilities and aviation functions and community spaces. And then to this end of the image, we have a science and technology precinct. So there's about 20 other buildings on the site and about another 380,000 square metres. And all these buildings are stitched together by these ecological corridors, so this landscape weaving through the site. And this idea of ecological corridors is how Shenzhen is actually, how the Shenzhen has been planned. It's been planned around this idea of the mountain to sea corridor. So these connections through the city that connect the mountains all the way through to the sea, and those planned parks and ecological corridors all the way along. So our site actually sits within one of those corridors, and we're trying to maintain that by allowing that landscape to come down under the roof into the building. And this is an image of when you take the lid off. You can see actually how little of the ground plane is actually occupied. The building is actually kind of almost like a series of pavilions within a landscape. And then a view just of the science and technology zone, all linked together by these ecological corridors. Another thing just to mention as well is Shenzhen has got some great regulations around this idea of sponge city. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's all about water management and retention on site. So again, our project is looking into those sponge city principles, using water retention on site and trying to create water features and running those water features through these ecological corridors. And then I'm going to just leave you with a short video, and I'll walk you through the spaces. Hopefully you'll understand and orientate yourself a little bit better. This is a very large project. So this is a view coming down underneath the roof, coming from the Eastern Plaza, which is the main entry point in the building, and coming across a land bridge which connects you to the existing neighbourhood. So you can walk from your house, pick up your suitcase, walk across the road and get onto a plane, which is incredible. Coming down, looking at the bus station, there's a high-speed rail in the background and a very large shopping mall. Overlooking the piers, everywhere there's landscape courtyards in the terminal as well. Coming up here from the arrivals curb right the way up to the departures area, overlooking the security processing. And then looking along the piers onto the... And then we've got the mangrove theme everywhere. We've even got mangroves growing within the building. And this is looking at the retail, so that we're trying to introduce nature everywhere into the building. Again, you can see different ceiling treatments in different areas to differentiate the different zones. This is the high-speed rail waiting hall. And then coming down underneath, and then coming up through some of these sunken courtyards, up to the retail. Again, there's a whole lot of sort of retail pavilions within a landscape, and it becomes a kind of a destination in its own right with shopping and other entertainment. And then the obligatory sunset view as we look over the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit about the materiality of the roof?
Yes. So the roof is actually steel. I think looking at some of the imagery, people had thought it was timber. It is steel. We've chosen a very warm colour, so that, oh goodness, that gold colour, so it looks like it's timber, but it's actually made of steel. But the gold colour is to kind of bring in that natural element. So we've got lots of landscape coming through, and we wanted it to feel warm, and we did not want the space to feel clinical. One of the kind of key themes was the most natural interchange in the world as the most integrated, as well as the most integrated interchange in the world. Sorry, I don't know if it's me. But yeah, it was all about that warmth and texture. We wanted to make it a very human-scaled place.
Is it glass then?
So yes, the roof is, it's ETFE. In most places ETFE, so we're trying to minimize the amount of material as possible. So that the actual shell of the roof as well, as I said, the double curvature gives really high efficiency. So we're trying to use the form to get those long spans. In some places we've had to use glass just in terms of fire and things like that in the airport, but as much as possible we've used ETFE, yeah.
I do have a question about the general strategy, and I guess could you maybe explain a little bit more which places are enclosed and which aren't? Is there kind of a general enclosure, and within that enclosure you have smaller spaces, or is it totally ventilated and uniquely the spaces that require air condition are?
Yeah, as much as possible. You would consider it external, but tempered space, very much protected. But in certain areas, we've had to enclose it. So, for example, the High Speed Rail waiting hall, that's fully enclosed. The terminal is mostly fully enclosed, except for we've got some courtyards in between. And the metro stations are mostly underground. But apart from that, really underneath that canopy, most of it is external with smaller pavilions dotted around. So we've really tried to push that and try to make the canopy really work.
Can I follow on from that? You had a plan, I think you described it as where you took the lid off.
Yeah.
On that, could you show us which because I was also similarly trying to understand, because I think, if I'm right, it's really quite a small area is enclosed.
Yeah. Let me just get to that slide and I'll show you. Yeah, here we go. I'm wondering, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
so
we can.
I probably need to point. So the terminal is enclosed. Here we got that's enclosed. This should be enclosed. So that. And then there's one story. This is external.
Wow, it's certainly not your average airport. Following on from this question about the structures, I thought they were too slender to be wood, but they're extremely elegant. Where it becomes the roof, it looks so simple and integrated. And I'm assuming you talked about the materiality changing. You've got integrated light, acoustic, all the services in there. Can you talk a little bit about the build-up of that roof and how it will actually end up looking that clean as opposed to with everything else?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, we've actually got different roof conditions. So in the terminal and in the high-speed rail station, we've got a soffit. We've kind of got the loop baffles and things like that. And the reason for that was because they wanted to put in a service zone and a gantry. So, and that was the reason for. We actually resisted that for a long time. We tried to do most things from the ground up, and try to make the roof just as simple as possible. So we did introduce that into the kind of internal areas so that they could be serviced and we could integrate lighting and all that kind of stuff into those parts. Yeah.
And they change.
The roof finish changes. So in those external parts that I just pointed out before, it's very simple. There's no lining. And then in the terminal and the high-speed rail, there's a different soffit treatment. And I think it's really to do with the character of the spaces, and also I think they felt they were more polished when they had a ceiling in those spaces. So but at the beginning we actually didn't really want a ceiling. We wanted to kind of minimise the material use, but it's ended up like that now.
Picking up on the sustainability theme, was there a target for embodied carbon?
It's targeting with 3 green stars in China. We tried to push that accreditation, and I think they were.
And what are some of the key decisions or design or material selections that are contributing to that?
Well, I think in terms of for us, it's all about material reduction. So it's all about reducing the amount of materials. In terms of sourcing the steel and things like that, I think I'm not sure how much control we will have in the end of the day, because it's in China and there'll be some steel contract that's probably already gone out that we don't necessarily know about. But yeah, that's the best way is to try and reduce as much as possible, I think, in this context, because we don't have the full information about the supply chain in China.
It's just changing to a more, let's say, global question about the design and the process. You talked about the multitude of organizations and bodies and municipal authorities and governmental authorities, the railway authorities they had to deal with. And yet, it seems beautifully resolved. So what were some of the key challenges that, as designers, you had to negotiate among those various organizations? Because surely they didn't all see things the same way.
I'm almost exhausted by your question, just even hearing it, because it's been 3 years.
Just only 2 things.
Yeah.
Don't name all 400.
Well, I'll tell you the biggest thing. They wanted to separate the roof of the hub from the airport. So the airport wanted its own identity. So we really had to battle to try and get the whole, to make it appear uniform. And that was a really big challenge for us. They wanted at one point to make the airport roof slightly higher than the hub roof, so that it would appear higher in the horizon. So that's been a key challenge, because the uniformity of the roof and the kind of how it all connects together, that's key to the project. And I think it was the mayor of Shenzhen that intervened in the end and said, no, it needs to be all the same. So yeah, that was a key challenge. Then I think the other challenge was around just the different programs in construction. So, for example, the high-speed rail is already under construction at the moment. There's an interfacing design team doing the design the platform. They've already done the construction drawings. They're starting on that, while we're still doing the preliminary design on other parts of the building. So there's interfacing design teams, different clients, and different programs, and the whole thing is it's converging. That's all I'll say.
What is the projected completion date?
Well, 2027. So it's starting on site in earnest, really properly, early next year. So we're racing towards that deadline, which may seem impossible, but anything's possible in Shenzhen.
It seems it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.